Welcome back to our videos on factoring. So for this video, we will be talking about or discussing factoring a perfect square trinomial. So how do we know if a certain expression is a perfect square trinomial? So let's give you first an example. So supposing we have the expression a squared plus 12a plus 36. So how would I know if this expression is a perfect square trinomial? So first that you need to do is to inspect the different terms. Okay, so I'll use a red pen so that you would know that these are how we will be analyzing the given expression. So look at the first term. It should be a perfect square. That means when you get the square root, you will get the number here. So a squared, the square root of a squared is a. So there is a square root of perfect square. Also, look at the last term. It should also be a perfect square. So 36, the square root of 36 is 6. Okay? Or 6 squared is equal to 6. So 36 is also a perfect square. So I will just write here the square root. We have a and we have 6. Now, for the middle term, try to check if the middle term corresponds to this one. Twice of a. Okay? So a is, our first term is a. So that's a. Our second term is 6, that is 6, and then you multiply it to 2. So 2ab is 12ab. So if this one, if the middle term is the same as this, oh sorry, not ab, 12a lang. 12a. So if that corresponds to the middle term, then the expression that you have is a perfect square trinomial. Okay, so again, in order for you to know if it's a perfect square, the perfect square trinomial, the first and the last term should be both perfect squares. And when you multiply the square roots of the first term and the last term, you multiply that to 2 also, the answer should be the middle term. Okay? So if that is the case, it's a perfect square trinomial. And how do you factor a perfect square trinomial? It's actually simple. The pattern is simply the square root of a and the square root of b. If it's plus and plus, if there are no negatives or minus in the expression, then you'll just put plus in the middle and then raise it to the second power. So this means the factor of a squared plus 12a plus 36 is if you apply the formula or the pattern, a squared is a, 36, the square root of 36 is 6. You can only see plus signs here, so I'll put plus here and then raise it to the second power. Again, you can only do this if the expression that you're factoring is a perfect square trinomial. So let's try again another one. Let's have b squared plus 18b plus 81. Again, the first thing to do is to check if it's a perfect square trinomial. B squared is a perfect square trinomial. So the square root of b squared is b. 81 is also a perfect square trinomial. That is 9 squared. And then let us check if so just to make sure, the square root of b squared is b, and the square root of 9 squared is 9. So just to show you that it is indeed a perfect square. So let's check the middle term. So it should be 2ab, 2 times the first term is b, the second term is 9. So we will have 18b. And this one is the same as this. So ibig sabihin, this is a perfect square trinomial. Hence, our factor would be the square root of the first term, b, the square root of the last term, 9, And then since they're all plus, plus, and then raise it to the second power. Okay? So again, make sure that the first and the last terms are perfect squares. And then when you multiply the first term, the square root of the first term and the square root of the last term times 2, the answer should be the middle term. In order for you to get a factor that is just the square of the first and then the square of the last, if it's all plus, then you just put plus here. Now, what if there is a minus sign? Okay? What if your, oh, sorry. What if your example looks like this? Okay. So how do we do it? Of course, let's check first if they're perfect squares. So c squared, the square root of c squared is c. The square root of 121 is 11. Okay, or 11 squared is equal to 121. And then let's check the middle term. So we should satisfy 2 times AB, or 2 times the first term and the last term. So 2 times C is the first term. The last term is the square root of 121, which is 11. Again, these are the square roots. So we have 2 times 11 is 22 times C, 22C. Again, they're the same. That means it's a perfect square trinomial. Hence, the factor would be the square root of the first, C, and the square root of the last, which is 11. Since you have here minus plus, if that's the pattern, then you put minus, then you put the square. Okay, so again, in order for you to factor perfect trinomial squares, all you need to do is to check first if the expression is a perfect trinomial square, a perfect square trinomial. Okay? So the formula would be just the square. The factor would be the square of the first, the square of the last term, and then it's either plus or minus depending on the given signs. So if I would like to give a general statement to this one, here is how it looks like. So general statement. So we have a squared plus 2ab plus b squared is equal to a plus b quantity squared. So if this is how your pattern looks like, perfect square, yung dulo, yung una, saka yung dulo, and then the middle term is twice this, the product of the square root of the first and the last, then this is your factor. If the format of the given is like this, then the factor is a minus b quantity squared. Okay, so again, check if the first and the last terms are perfect square. Check if the middle term is the product of 2 and the square roots of the first and the last term. Okay, so it's now your turn. Let us practice by answering some of the examples. Let's have 4a squared plus 20a plus 25. 16m squared minus 14m plus 25, and 49x squared minus 28x plus 4. So let us factor this and practice on your own. If you need to go back to the previous time just to review how we did the factoring, you can do that. You can just simply rewind or play back the video. If you think you're ready, kindly pause this video so that you can work on the exercise or the practice exercises. Once you're done, press the play button again so that you can check whether your answer is correct. Okay, so let me pause the video now so that you can answer. Okay, so let's check your answers. First, in order for us to know how to factor this, we have to check first if it follows the perfect square trinomial pattern. So 4a squared is a perfect square. The square root is 2a. 25 is also a perfect square. The square root is 5. So therefore, the answer would be, not yet pa pala. So if this one, the square root of this is 2a and this one is 5, so we have to check if the middle term is twice of the product of 2a and 5. So 2a times 5 is 10a times 2 is 20. So that's correct. So therefore, our answer would be 2a plus 5 squared. Okay? I hope that you got that correctly. Let's go to the next example. This one is a perfect square. The square root is 4m. This one is also a perfect square. The square root is 5. So let's check the middle term. If it's twice the product of the first and the square root of the first and the square root of the last. So this one is 4m times 5 is 20m times 2 is 40m. So that's correct. So our answer would be 4m and then 5. Since it's minus and plus, I will put minus here and then square. On the third example, let's check. Is this a perfect square? Yes, it's 7. The square root is 7x. Is this a perfect square? Yes, the square root is 4. Oh, sorry, 2. And then let's check the middle term. Let us check if it's twice the product of the first term, the square root of the first term and the square root of the last term. So we will have 7x times 2 is 14x times 2 is 28x. So that's correct. Therefore, our answer would be 7x minus 2 quantities. So I hope that you were able to understand how to factor using perfect square trinomial or how to factor a perfect square trinomial. Just remember this general statement. If the given question or expression follows this pattern, the one on the left, then you can factor it using the pattern on the right. Okay? So if you need to more activities, you can email me to ask for more activities, or you can proceed answering your module so that you can practice more on this topic. Thank you and have a nice day.